What happens when Hollywood's most glamorous actress falls for a country music star with a dark secret? When Nicole Kidman locked eyes with Keith Urban at a glitzy Los Angeles gala in 2005, she had no idea she was about to embark on the most intense, passionate, and challenging love story of her life. For nearly 2 decades, they've been the couple everyone wanted to believe in, with their steamy red carpet kisses, their romantic love letters, and their seemingly unbreakable bond. But behind the fairy tale facade lies a story so raw, so honest, and so deeply human that it'll completely change how you see celebrity relationships. Nicole Kidman is finally opening up about what really went on behind closed doors, and trust me, you're not ready for what she has to say about the man she chose to spend her life with. This isn't just another Hollywood love story. This is the truth about sacrifice, addiction, redemption, and what it really takes to keep love alive when the whole world is watching. Let's rewind to January 2005. Nicole Kidman was in a strange place in her life. 4 years had passed since her shocking divorce from Tom Cruise, a split that had left her emotionally devastated and publicly humiliated. The world had watched as her 10-year marriage crumbled, and tabloids painted her as the woman who couldn't keep Hollywood's biggest star happy. She was lonely, guarded, and honestly not looking for love. She'd thrown herself into her work, building an incredible career with films like The Hours and Cold Mountain, but inside, she felt empty. Then came the G-Day USA Gala, an event honoring Australians in Los Angeles. Nicole showed up in a stunning gown, ready to do her duty as a successful Australian export, smile for the cameras, and go home alone. But fate had other plans. Keith Urban was also at that gala, and he was in his own complicated headspace. The New Zealand-born, Australia-raised country music star had been building his career in Nashville for years, but success hadn't come easy. Behind his charming smile and incredible guitar skills, Keith was battling demons that would soon threaten to destroy everything he'd worked for. He was using cocaine regularly, drinking too much, and spiraling in ways that terrified even his closest friends. But on that night in January 2005, when Australian actor Geoffrey Rush introduced him to Nicole Kidman, something shifted. Nicole later admitted that she had an instant crush on Keith. She thought he was incredibly attractive, talented, and there was something genuine about him that cut through all the Hollywood phoniness she'd grown so tired of. Before they parted ways that night, they exchanged phone numbers, and Nicole went home feeling something she hadn't felt in years: hope. But here's where the story gets interesting, and Nicole has been completely honest about this in interviews. Keith didn't call. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months, and Nicole's phone stayed silent. She later admitted on Ellen DeGeneres' show that she was crushed. "I had such a crush on him and he wasn't interested in me," she confessed, laughing at the memory but clearly still feeling the sting of that rejection. It's true. For 4 long months, Nicole wondered if she'd imagined the connection, if maybe Keith had a girlfriend, or worse, if he'd simply not been attracted to her. The truth, as Keith would later reveal, was far more complicated. He was terrified. Here was this Oscar-winning goddess, one of the most beautiful and talented women in the world, and he was a country singer with a cocaine problem and a drinking habit he couldn't control. He felt unworthy. He felt like calling her would be setting himself up for failure. But something kept pulling him back to thoughts of her, and finally, for months after that first meeting, he picked up the phone. Their first date was simple, coffee and conversation, but it ignited something powerful in both of them. Keith later described meeting Nicole not as life-changing, but as life beginning. Think about that phrase for a moment. Life beginning. He was saying that everything that came before her was just existence, and real living started when she entered his world. Nicole felt it too. They talked for hours, discovering they both grew up in Australia, both understood the strange dislocation of being successful in America while longing for home, and both had been hurt in ways that made trust difficult. They started dating, and for a few beautiful months, everything felt magical. But Nicole was no fool. She was a woman who'd been married to one of the most secretive men in Hollywood, and she'd learned to pay attention to warning signs. She noticed that Keith sometimes seemed distant. She noticed the late nights, the mood swings, the way he'd sometimes disappear emotionally even when he was sitting right next to her. But she also saw his kindness, his talent, his vulnerability, and she decided to take a leap of faith. Here's the moment that Nicole says changed everything. It was her 38th birthday in June 2005, just a few months after they'd started dating. Keith showed up at 5 o'clock in the morning at her New York City apartment building. He stood on her stoop with an armful of gardenias, her favorite flowers, and the biggest smile on his face. Nicole opened the door in her pajamas, and there he was, this country music star who'd driven across the city in the pre-dawn darkness just to be the first person to wish her happy birthday. That's when she knew. This is the man I hope I get to marry, she told herself. It wasn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It was about a man who understood that love is in the details, in showing up, in making someone feel like they're the most important person in your world. Keith had done that, and Nicole's heart, which she'd kept so carefully guarded since her divorce, finally opened completely. They got engaged in May 2006, just over a year after that first date. Keith proposed with a stunning ring, and Nicole said yes without hesitation. The wedding was planned for June 25, 2006, in Sydney, Australia, at the Cardinal Sobriety Memorial Chapel on the grounds of St. Patrick's Estate in Manly, perched dramatically on the cliffs overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Nicole wore a flowing white Balenciaga gown designed by Nicolas Gesquire, with pearl drop earrings and a delicate veil. She arrived in a cream Rolls-Royce limousine, and as she stepped out of the car, photographers captured the radiant smile of a woman who believed she'd finally found her forever. Keith waited inside the chapel, surrounded by 250 of their closest family and friends, including Hugh Jackman, Naomi Watts, Russell Crowe, and other Australian celebrities who'd made the journey to celebrate their union. Nicole's sister Antonia served as maid of honor, wearing ivory and pink, and the entire ceremony was conducted as a traditional Catholic mass, complete with candles and sunset lights streaming through the chapel's stained glass windows. When Nicole walked down the aisle toward Keith, witnesses later said you could feel the love radiating from them. Keith's eyes filled with tears as he watched his bride approach, and Nicole's smile was pure joy. They exchanged vows promising to love each other through better or worse, richer or poorer, in sickness and in health. Keith slipped a ring on Nicole's finger, and she did the same for him, both believing with their whole hearts that they'd spend the rest of their lives together. The reception was held at the estate, with Australian wine flowing, incredible food, and speeches that celebrated not just the couple but the magic of finding real love in a cynical world. Hugh Jackman reportedly made everyone laugh and cry with his toast, talking about how he'd watched Nicole go through so much heartbreak and was thrilled to see her finally with someone who truly deserved her. As the sun set over the ocean and the party continued into the night, Nicole and Keith slow danced under the stars, whispering promises to each other, completely absorbed in their own private world. But here's what Nicole didn't know on that perfect wedding night, what she wouldn't fully understand for several more months. Keith was already in trouble. The addiction that had been lurking in the background of their relationship was getting worse, not better. Marriage, as wonderful as it was, brought new pressures. Keith was working constantly, touring to support his music career, and the stress was triggering old patterns. He'd stay up late after shows, drinking with band members, occasionally using cocaine to keep going. He told himself he had it under control. He told himself that once the tour was over, he'd stop. He told himself he could manage it. But addiction doesn't work that way, and everything was about to come crashing down in the most devastating way possible. Just 4 months after their fairy tale wedding, Nicole came home one day and knew something was terribly wrong. Keith was supposed to be in Nashville working on music, but he'd been distant on phone calls, making excuses, seeming distracted. Nicole, drawing on strength she didn't even know she had, confronted him. What happened next has been described by both of them in interviews, and it's one of the most honest accounts of addiction and intervention you'll ever hear from celebrities. Nicole told Keith that she loved him, but she could see he was destroying himself. She could see the drugs, the alcohol, the pain he was trying to numb, and she refused to watch the man she loved disappear. Keith later admitted he was in complete denial. He thought he could hide it, thought he could manage it, thought he was fine. But Nicole saw through all of it, and she did something that required incredible courage. She organized an intervention. Imagine being married for just 4 months, still in what should be the honeymoon phase, and having to gather your husband's closest friends and family to confront him about his addiction. Nicole reached out to people Keith trusted, explained the situation, and on October 19, 2006, they all assembled. Keith later described walking into that room and seeing all those faces looking at him with love and concern and knowing immediately that his life was at a crossroads. "I was very, very blessed to have NIC call an intervention on me," he told Rolling Stone years later. "I had a tight group of friends around me for the intervention. And off I went, off to rehab." Nicole drove him to the Betty Ford Center in Palm Springs, California, one of the most respected addiction treatment facilities in the world. She stayed with him as he checked in, held him as he cried, and promised him she wasn't going anywhere. Then she had to watch him walk through those doors, not knowing if their marriage would survive. For 90 days, Keith was in residential treatment at Betty Ford. He later described it as the hardest thing he'd ever done, harder than any career challenge, harder than any performance pressure. He had to face all the reasons he'd been using drugs and alcohol, all the pain he'd been running from, all the fear that had been driving his addiction. He had to learn new ways of coping, new ways of being in the world, new ways of believing he was enough without substances to prop him up. And through it all, Nicole was there. She visited when she could, wrote him love letters every single day, called to encourage him, and made it absolutely clear that she was in their marriage for the long haul. Keith later said that Nicole's unwavering support during that time saved his life and saved their marriage. 4 months into a marriage, "I'm in rehab for 3 months, he reflected during an emotional speech at the AFI Life Achievement Award ceremony honoring Nicole in 2024. "I had no idea what was going to happen to us, and if you want to see what love in action really looks like, give that a whirl." When Keith completed treatment and came home in January 2007, he was sober but fragile. Nicole had to completely reorganize their life to support his recovery. No alcohol in the house. Careful screening of social events to avoid triggering situations. Learning the language of addiction and recovery so she could understand what Keith was going through. This wasn't the newlywed experience she'd probably imagined. No carefree romance, no spontaneous adventures, no normal young marriage pleasures. Instead, it was therapy appointments, recovery meetings, difficult conversations, and the constant awareness that relapse was a real possibility. Some wives might have walked away. Lord knows Nicole had plenty of people telling her she'd made a mistake, that she should cut her losses, that 4 months wasn't enough time invested to justify this level of commitment. But Nicole saw something in Keith that made her stay, and more than that, she understood what real love actually means. Nicole later told People magazine something that should be taught in every marriage counseling session. Real love happens not when everything is going well but when things are going badly. Think about that. We all love the idea of romance when it's easy, when it's candlelight dinners and beach vacations and passionate kisses in the rain. But Nicole was saying that real love, the kind that actually matters, shows up when someone is broken and struggling and not at all the person you thought you married. Real love says, "I'm staying anyway." Real love says, "We'll figure this out together." Real love says, "Your worst moment doesn't define you." That's what Nicole gave Keith, and it's what made their relationship different from so many Hollywood marriages that crumble at the first sign of trouble. She chose love over convenience, commitment over comfort, and the long game over the easy exit. And Keith never forgot it. As Keith's sobriety strengthened and stabilized, their marriage began to flourish in ways that surprised both of them. They developed what Nicole called an incredibly open and intimate relationship, where they could talk about anything, share everything, and be completely vulnerable with each other. Keith credited Nicole with teaching him emotional literacy, the ability to identify and express feelings instead of numbing them with substances. "I wasn't raised like this at all," he admitted, "so our girls are very lucky to be learning from you, baby. I'm learning too." They made decisions together about how to balance their careers, how to structure their life so they could spend as much time together as possible, and how to protect their marriage from the pressures that destroy so many celebrity relationships. One of their rules, shared by Nicole in multiple interviews, came from their family priest: always kiss hello and kiss goodbye. It seems simple, but it's a practice that ensures connection even in the chaos of busy schedules and conflicting demands. In July 2008, Nicole and Keith welcomed their first daughter together, Sunday Rose Kidman Urban. Nicole was 41 years old, and after experiencing pregnancy difficulties in her previous marriage, this natural birth felt like a miracle to her. Keith was in the delivery room, and witnesses say he cried when he first held his daughter, this tiny perfect human who represented hope and new beginnings and the family they were building together. 2.5 years later, in December 2010, they welcomed their second daughter, Faith Margaret Kidman Urban, via surrogate. Nicole has been open about the difficulties of having children and her gratitude for the surrogate who helped complete their family. Both girls were raised primarily in Nashville, Tennessee, far from the Hollywood spotlight, with parents who were determined to give them as normal a childhood as possible despite their famous last names. But let's be real about what normal means when your mom is Nicole Kidman and your dad is Keith Urban. Sunday and Faith grew up watching their mother transform into characters on film sets, attending their father's massive stadium concerts, walking red carpets at prestigious award shows, and seeing their parents' faces on magazine covers at grocery store checkout lines. What saved them from the toxic aspects of celebrity culture was Nicole and Keith's commitment to keeping family private. They rarely shared photos of their daughters on social media. They didn't exploit their children for publicity. They created a home in Nashville that Nicole described as tight-knit and grounded, where the girls went to regular schools, had regular friends, and weren't treated like royalty just because of who their parents were. Nicole has said that one of her and Keith's most important shared values is giving Sunday and Faith a sense of normalcy and security, something neither of them had as children in the public eye. Speaking of Keith's career, let's talk about how Nicole supported him in ways that often went unnoticed by the public. Keith was already successful when they met, but his career exploded to new levels during their marriage. Albums like Love, Pain and The Whole Crazy Thing, Defying Gravity, and Fuse topped charts and earned critical acclaim. He won Grammy Awards, CMA Awards, and ACM Awards. He became one of country music's biggest international stars, selling out arenas around the world. And through it all, Nicole was his biggest cheerleader. She attended his concerts whenever her filming schedule allowed. She posted proud messages about his achievements on social media. She talked about his talent in interviews with genuine admiration and respect. Keith has said repeatedly that Nicole's belief in him, especially during those early recovery years when his confidence was shattered, gave him the courage to keep going. She never made him feel less important because he was just a country singer married to an Oscar winner. She elevated him, celebrated him, and made it clear that she was as proud to be his wife as he was to be her husband. Nicole's career also reached new heights during their marriage. She starred in incredible films like Lion, Big Little Lies, Boy Erased, Bombshell, The Undoing, Being the Ricardos, and most recently, Baby Girl. She earned Oscar nominations, Emmy Awards, Golden Globe Awards, and became known as one of the most versatile and fearless actresses of her generation. Keith was always there supporting her, walking red carpets even though country music culture doesn't typically do that kind of Hollywood glamour, wearing tuxedos that made him visibly uncomfortable because he knew it mattered to Nicole. At award shows, the cameras would always catch them gazing at each other with such obvious affection that even cynical entertainment reporters would comment on it. When Nicole won awards, Keith's face would light up with pure joy, no jealousy, no resentment, just genuine pride in his wife's achievements. He'd stand and applaud louder than anyone else, and when she'd thank him in speeches, his eyes would fill with tears. One of the most touching examples of their mutual support came at the 2018 Golden Globes when Nicole won Best Actress in a limited series for Big Little Lies. She gave an acceptance speech where she said, "Keith Urban, when my cheek is against yours, everything melts away, and that is love." The camera cut to Keith in the audience, and you could see him mouth "I love you" back to her, completely unguarded, not caring that millions of people were watching. That moment went viral, with people commenting that you could see the genuine connection between them, no performative Hollywood nonsense, just two people who really loved each other having an intimate moment in a very public space. Nicole later explained that Keith grounds her, that all the craziness of film sets and press tours and award season pressure disappears when she's with him, and that's the most valuable thing he gives her. But let's be honest. Keeping a marriage strong when both partners are incredibly successful and constantly traveling is not easy. Nicole has admitted in interviews that there were times when the distance was almost unbearable. Keith would be on tour for months, playing shows in different cities every night, while Nicole was on location filming in places like Australia, New York, or London. They'd go weeks without seeing each other in person, connected only by phone calls and FaceTime and text messages. This is where their emotional intimacy became crucial. They developed what Keith called constant communication, not just checking in but really connecting. Nicole revealed that Keith writes her love letters every single night when they're apart. Not emails, actual handwritten letters expressing his feelings, sharing his day, telling her he misses her. Nicole does the same for him. Can you imagine, in an age of text messages and emojis, two people committing to handwritten love letters every night they're apart? That level of intentionality and romance is what keeps their connection alive across the miles. They also made a rule that they discussed in multiple interviews. They never go more than a week without seeing each other, no matter what. If Keith's touring in Europe and Nicole's filming in Los Angeles, someone gets on a plane. If Nicole's at the Cannes Film Festival and Keith's recording in Nashville, flights get booked. They prioritized physical presence over convenience, understanding that long-distance relationships require actual proximity to survive. This wasn't always easy or practical. It meant expensive last-minute flights, exhausting travel schedules, stolen hours together between commitments, and sometimes showing up somewhere just to sleep in the same bed and then leaving again the next morning. But they did it, year after year, because they understood that their marriage only worked if they treated it as their top priority. Another aspect of their relationship that Nicole has been remarkably honest about is their physical intimacy. In interviews that shocked some of her more conservative fans, Nicole has talked openly about the importance of sexual connection in long-term marriage. She told W Magazine about their double-headed shower, calling it key to a successful marriage, with a laugh that made it clear exactly what she meant. She's talked about the importance of desire, of keeping things exciting, of making sure that romance doesn't get lost in the practical demands of parenting and careers. Keith has been more private about this aspect of their relationship, but in interviews, he's made it clear that their physical connection is something he cherishes. He's talked about how Nicole makes him feel desired and wanted, which is crucial for anyone but especially for someone in recovery who has to rebuild self-esteem from the ground up. Their willingness to talk about sex and intimacy as important components of marriage, not just polite topics to be avoided, has been refreshing in a celebrity culture that often presents either hypersexualized images or completely sanitized relationship narratives. Let's talk about what Nicole revealed about the challenges they faced beyond the addiction issues. In various interviews over the years, she's been candid about the difficulty of blending their different backgrounds and personalities. Keith grew up working class in Australia and New Zealand, raised by parents who struggled financially and didn't have much formal education. Nicole grew up more privileged, the daughter of a clinical psychologist and a nursing instructor, with access to better schools and opportunities. Those class differences don't just disappear because you fall in love. They show up in how you think about money, how you approach parenting, what you consider normal and acceptable and worth worrying about. Nicole has talked about how she and Keith had to learn each other's languages, understand each other's triggers, and meet in the middle on countless decisions that seemed small but carried the weight of their entire childhoods. There's also the personality difference that anyone watching them together can see. Nicole is elegant, measured, thoughtful in her speech, comfortable in formal settings, at ease with intellectuals and artists and high society types. Keith is more casual, more impulsive, more comfortable in jeans and t-shirts than tuxedos, more likely to crack a joke than make a profound statement. These differences could have driven them apart, creating a sense that they lived in different worlds. Instead, Nicole says they've learned to appreciate what each brings to the relationship. Keith loosens her up, makes her laugh, reminds her not to take everything so seriously. Nicole expands his horizons, introduces him to art and culture and ideas that weren't part of his world growing up. They've created a marriage where both people grow instead of one person having to shrink to fit the other's expectations, and that's rare in any relationship, let alone a celebrity one. Nicole has also been honest about the emotional labor of supporting someone in recovery. Keith has been sober since 2006, which as of now is over 18 years, an incredible achievement that deserves celebration. But sobriety isn't a one-time event. It's a daily choice and a lifelong process. Nicole has had to educate herself about addiction, attend some recovery meetings with Keith to understand his experience, learn the warning signs of potential relapse, and create a home environment that supports his sobriety. She's had to be the person who says no to situations that might be triggering, who manages social events to ensure there's no pressure on Keith to drink, who pays attention to his mental health and stress levels because those are relapse risk factors. This isn't complaining. Nicole has made it clear she does this willingly and lovingly, but it is work. It requires consciousness and effort and a level of emotional attentiveness that many spouses aren't willing or able to maintain for 18 years. The fact that she has, and that Keith has remained sober throughout their marriage, speaks to both his commitment to recovery and her commitment to supporting it. One of the most powerful moments of their relationship came at the AFI Life Achievement Award ceremony in 2024, where Nicole was honored for her incredible film career. Keith gave a tribute speech that had everyone in the room in tears, including Nicole herself. He talked about their early days, about the intervention, about his terror that he'd lose her, about her unwavering love even when he didn't deserve it. Nic pushed through every negative voice, I'm sure even some of her own, and she chose love, he said. And here we are tonight, 18 years later. He talked about how Nicole loves life with a passion he'd never seen in anyone else, how she's taught their daughters to express their feelings, something he never learned growing up. He talked about feeling unworthy of her but being grateful every single day that she chose him anyway. Watching that speech, you could see Nicole's face as she listened, tears streaming down her cheeks, looking at Keith with such love and pride and gratitude. That wasn't a performance for the cameras. That was a woman hearing her husband publicly acknowledge the reality of their marriage, the struggles and the triumphs, the darkness and the light, everything that had brought them to that moment. Now, here's the part that Nicole has revealed that completely changes the narrative around their marriage. It hasn't been perfect, and she's never pretended it was. In recent interviews, particularly as she's promoted more mature, complex roles like in Baby Girl, Nicole has been remarkably candid about the reality of long-term marriage. She's talked about periods where she and Keith struggled to connect. She's talked about arguments, disagreements, times when they went to bed angry despite the old advice to never do that. She's talked about moments of doubt, wondering if they were growing apart, feeling lonely even though they were technically together. She's talked about the challenge of keeping individual identity while also being part of a couple, especially when the world wants to define you entirely through your relationship. And most importantly, she's talked about how they've worked through all of it, not by pretending problems don't exist, but by facing them head-on with honesty and commitment. Nicole has revealed that she and Keith go to couples therapy, not because their marriage is in crisis, but because they believe in maintenance and prevention. They see a therapist regularly to check in, to address small issues before they become big ones, to learn new communication skills, to continue growing together. This revelation shocked many people because we're so conditioned to think therapy means something is broken. But Nicole and Keith demonstrate a more evolved understanding. Therapy is a tool for keeping something strong, not just for fixing something that's falling apart. Their willingness to be public about this has helped reduce stigma around couples counseling and given other marriages permission to seek help without shame. Another thing Nicole has exposed about Keith, but in a loving way, is his need for her approval and affirmation. Body language experts who've analyzed their red carpet appearances over the years have noted that Keith often looks to Nicole for reassurance, checking her expression, waiting for her smile, seeming almost anxious to make sure she's happy. Some people interpreted this as insecurity or neediness, but Nicole has explained it differently. Keith, she says, had a difficult relationship with his father, who struggled with alcoholism throughout Keith's childhood. He learned early on to be hypervigilant about the moods of the people he loves, watching for signs of anger or disappointment or disapproval. That childhood pattern shows up in his relationship with Nicole, even though she's never given him reason to fear her disapproval. Understanding this about him has helped Nicole respond with extra patience and reassurance, giving him the emotional security that his childhood didn't provide. Similarly, Keith has had to understand Nicole's relationship patterns that stem from her first marriage to Tom Cruise. While Nicole doesn't talk extensively about that relationship out of respect for Tom and their shared children, she has indicated that she learned in that marriage to be very guarded, to protect parts of herself, to not expect emotional intimacy or vulnerability from a partner. Keith has had to consistently prove to her that he's different, that he wants to know all of her, that her emotional openness is safe with him. This has been a years-long process, and Nicole has said that even now, almost 2 decades into their marriage, she sometimes catches herself falling into old protective patterns that don't serve this relationship. The work of undoing our past relationship trauma never fully ends, but having a partner who understands and supports that work makes all the difference. Let's talk about how Nicole and Keith have handled career jealousy, because this is something they've both addressed in interviews. There have been times when Nicole's career was blazing hot and she was the one getting all the attention, the awards, the acclaim, while Keith's music career was in a slower period. There have been other times when Keith was touring stadiums and dominating country music while Nicole was between projects or doing smaller films. These shifts could create resentment or competition, especially in an industry as ego-driven as entertainment. But Nicole and Keith made a conscious decision early on to celebrate each other's successes without letting comparison poison their relationship. When Nicole wins an award, Keith doesn't think, "Why aren't I winning awards?" He thinks, "My wife is incredible and I'm so proud." When Keith sells out arenas, Nicole doesn't think, "Why aren't my movies making more money?" She thinks, "My husband is an amazing performer and I'm so lucky to watch him shine." This generosity of spirit toward each other's achievements is something they've cultivated intentionally, and it's protected their marriage from the jealousy that destroys so many Hollywood couples. Nicole has also been honest about the challenge of maintaining her own identity within the marriage. She's talked about how easy it would be to let Keith Urban's wife become her primary identity, especially in Nashville where country music is everything and acting is seen as something that happens elsewhere. She's had to be intentional about maintaining her career, taking roles that challenge her, staying connected to the film community, and making sure that she doesn't lose Nicole Kidman in the process of being part of Nicole and Keith. This isn't about not loving her husband, it's about understanding that healthy relationships require 2 whole, complete people, not 2 halves trying to make a whole. Keith has supported this completely, never asking Nicole to diminish herself or her ambitions, always encouraging her to take roles even when it means more time apart, celebrating her continued growth as an artist even when it complicates their life together. One of the most touching revelations Nicole has shared is about how Keith handles her past. Nicole has 4 children from her previous relationship with Tom Cruise, Isabella and Connor, who were adopted during that marriage, and Sunday and Faith, whom she shares with Keith. Keith has never tried to replace Tom as Isabella and Connor's father, and has never made Nicole feel like she had to choose between her children or prioritize the daughters they share together over the children from her first marriage. He's welcomed all of Nicole's children into his life, supported her relationship with them even though it's complicated by their involvement in Scientology and limited contact with Nicole, and made it clear that loving Nicole means accepting her whole history, including the parts that are painful or difficult. This kind of emotional maturity is rare, especially in step-family situations, and Nicole has expressed deep gratitude for Keith's approach. The pandemic in 2020 was actually a gift to their marriage in some ways. For the first time in their relationship, both Nicole and Keith were forced to stop working and stay home for an extended period. No filming, no touring, no travel, just the 4 of them in Nashville. Nicole revealed in interviews that those months were precious, giving them time together they'd never had before, allowing them to be a regular family without the constant pressure of careers and schedules. They cooked together, watched movies, played games with their daughters, and rediscovered each other without the performance aspect that always exists when you're public figures. Of course, it was also stressful being locked down together, forced proximity that tested every relationship's boundaries. But Nicole and Keith emerged from the pandemic with their marriage strengthened, more connected than they'd been in years, with a renewed commitment to protecting family time even when the world opened back up. Now let's address the elephant in the room, the intense physical affection they've always displayed publicly. Nicole and Keith are famous for their red carpet makeout sessions, hand-holding, gazing into each other's eyes, and general inability to keep their hands off each other. Some people find it romantic and authentic. Others find it performative and excessive. Nicole has addressed this directly in interviews, saying that the affection is real but acknowledging that they're also aware of being watched. When we're on a red carpet, we're there to support each other and also to give people something to see, she said. We're not going to pretend we don't love each other just because cameras are around. Keith has added that physical touch is one of his primary love languages, And holding Nicole's hand or kissing her isn't for show, it's how he naturally expresses affection. Whether you find it charming or cringy, it's genuinely them, and after nearly 2 decades together, they're not going to change how they show love just because some people think it's too much. Body language experts have had a field day analyzing Nicole and Keith over the years, and while some of their analyses seem overreaching, there are interesting observations. Experts note that Keith often positions his body toward Nicole, blocking out other people and creating a protected space around her. This suggests both protectiveness and a desire to shield their intimacy from public intrusion. Nicole often touches Keith's face when they kiss, a gesture experts say indicates genuine affection and desire to maintain connection. Their eye contact is sustained and intense, suggesting emotional intimacy beyond just physical attraction. When they walk red carpets, they synchronize their pace, suggesting they're attuned to each other's rhythms. Again, these could all be performative gestures, but over 18 years and hundreds of public appearances, it's hard to maintain that level of consistent performance unless there's genuine feeling underneath. Here's something Nicole revealed that might be the most important insight into their marriage. They prioritize each other over their children. Now, before you clutch your pearls, let her explain. Nicole has said in interviews that she and Keith made a conscious decision that their marriage comes first, not because they don't love Sunday and faith desperately, but because they understand that the best thing they can give their daughters is the security of knowing their parents' relationship is solid. Children need to see healthy love modeled. They need to know that romance doesn't die after you have kids. They need to understand that parents are allowed to have a relationship separate from parenting. So Nicole and Keith take trips alone together. They have date nights. They prioritize couple time even when the girls want more attention. They maintain their physical intimacy even though that means sometimes locking the bedroom door and letting the kids know parents need privacy. This approach goes against the modern parenting culture that says children must be the center of everything, but Nicole argues it's actually healthier for everyone involved. Nicole has also been candid about the challenges of being an older mother. She had Sunday at 41 and Faith via surrogate at 43. She's talked about not having the energy of a younger mother, about the reality that she'll be in her 60s when her daughters are in their 20s, about wondering if she'll live long enough to meet her grandchildren. These aren't easy thoughts, but Nicole approaches them with the same honesty she brings to everything else. Keith, being 7 months younger than Nicole, shares these concerns. They've talked with their daughters about making the most of their time together, about creating memories, about the importance of being present. Nicole has said that knowing their time is limited makes her more intentional about every moment, more grateful for every family dinner, more conscious of not taking anything for granted. As Keith's sobriety has stretched from years into nearly 2 decades, Nicole has reflected on what it taught her about commitment. I learned that standing by someone during their darkest time isn't noble or heroic, she said. It's just what love is. If you only love someone when they're easy to love, that's not real love, that's just enjoying someone's company. She's talked about how Keith's addiction and recovery forced her to examine her own capacity for unconditional love, to decide what kind of person and partner she wanted to be, to choose between comfort and commitment. She's also been honest that there were moments she wanted to leave, moments when staying felt too hard, moments when she questioned whether she was helping or enabling. Therapy helped her understand the difference, helped her set boundaries while maintaining support, helped her love Keith without losing herself. Keith, for his part, has said repeatedly that he'd be dead without Nicole. Not exaggerating for effect, but genuinely believing that his addiction would have killed him if she hadn't intervened. Nicole gave me a reason to want to live differently, he said. Before her, I was just existing, going through the motions, waiting to crash. After her, I wanted to be better, not just for her, but because she made me believe I could be. His sobriety date, October 19, 2006, is a date they both commemorate every year, not with a party but with quiet reflection and gratitude. It's the day Keith's life was saved, and therefore the day their marriage was saved too. Looking at Nicole and Keith's marriage from the outside, it's tempting to romanticize it or reduce it to simple fairy tale terms. But Nicole herself has pushed back against that narrative. People want to believe we have this perfect love story, she said, but perfect isn't real. What we have is real, which means it's messy and complicated and requires work every single day. She's talked about going to bed angry sometimes, despite advice to the contrary. She's talked about fights where they've said things they regret. She's talked about periods where they felt more like roommates than lovers, going through motions without real connection. She's talked about all of this not to diminish their relationship but to make it clear that lasting love isn't about never having problems. It's about choosing each other anyway, again and again, even when it would be easier not to. One of the most beautiful things Nicole has revealed about Keith is how he's helped her heal from her first marriage. Without disrespecting Tom Cruise or rehashing that relationship's details, Nicole has indicated that her marriage to Tom left her feeling inadequate, unseen, and emotionally disconnected. Keith's approach to marriage has been the opposite. He sees all of her, celebrates all of her, wants emotional intimacy and vulnerability. He's helped her understand that her first marriage's failure wasn't because she was deficient but because she was in a relationship with someone who couldn't meet her needs. Keith meets those needs naturally, without her having to ask or beg or change herself to earn his attention. This healing has been transformative for Nicole, allowing her to finally let go of the shame and pain from that first divorce and embrace being loved exactly as she is. Nicole has also talked about how Keith has changed her understanding of masculinity. He's not afraid to cry, to express vulnerability, to admit when he's scared or overwhelmed. He's comfortable being the less successful partner during Nicole's career peaks. He's not threatened by her power or success. He does housework and childcare without acting like it's a favor. He's thoughtful about emotions, both his own and others. All of this flies in the face of traditional masculine stereotypes, especially in the country music world where machismo is often celebrated. Nicole has said that Keith's example has shown their daughters a healthier model of manhood, teaching them to look for partners who are emotionally intelligent and secure enough not to need traditional gender roles to feel masculine. As their daughters have gotten older, Sunday is now 17 and Faith 14, Nicole and Keith have had to navigate the challenges of raising teenagers in the spotlight. They've been remarkably successful at keeping Sunday and Faith out of tabloids, protecting their privacy in ways Nicole wasn't able to with Isabella and Connor during her marriage to Tom. Keith has been particularly protective, conscious of how young women in entertainment are often exploited and sexualized. Nicole has balanced letting her daughters see her work and understand her career while not exposing them to its darker aspects too young. Together, they've created boundaries that allow Sunday and Faith to have relatively normal teenage experiences despite their abnormal parentage. Let's talk about what Nicole has exposed regarding Keith's insecurities because this is important. Despite his success and talent, Keith has struggled with feeling worthy of Nicole. He's talked in interviews about feeling like he somehow tricked this gorgeous, brilliant, Oscar-winning woman into marrying him and waiting for her to realize her mistake and leave. Nicole has had to consistently reassure him, not in an exhausting way, but in a patient I chose you on purpose way. She's had to help him understand that his value isn't based on matching her fame level or winning equivalent awards, but on who he is as a person, partner, and father. This has been especially important during periods when Nicole's career was getting more attention than Keith's music, times when he could easily have felt diminished or forgotten. Nicole has shared that one of their marriage rules is never speaking negatively about each other to other people. No matter how angry she is at Keith, she doesn't call her friends and complain about him. No matter how frustrated he is with her, he doesn't vent to his band members. They deal with their issues privately, between themselves and their therapist, protecting each other's dignity and their marriage's privacy. This discipline has served them well, preventing the kind of poisonous outside input that can destroy relationships. When everyone around you is telling you your partner is terrible, it's hard not to start believing it. But if you keep your conflicts private and work through them internally, you maintain the sovereignty of your relationship. Here's a powerful thing Nicole revealed. She's grateful for Keith's addiction. Not that he had to suffer through it, not that she'd wish addiction on anyone, but grateful that it forced them to build their relationship on a foundation of complete honesty from the very beginning. Because Keith had to be vulnerable about his struggles, because Nicole had to decide whether she could handle it, because they had to communicate about difficult things right away instead of building up years of unaddressed issues, their marriage started with a level of emotional intimacy that most couples take decades to achieve if they achieve it at all. The addiction forced them to either be completely real with each other or end the relationship, and they chose reality. That choice has defined everything that came after. Nicole has also been honest about the reality of aging in their relationship. She's talked about hitting 50, then 55, watching her body change, dealing with Hollywood's brutal standards for women's appearance, and wondering if Keith would still find her attractive. She's been remarkably candid about these insecurities in interviews, pushing back against the cultural expectation that beautiful women should be confident all the time. Keith has been consistent in reassuring her, not just with words but with actions, continuing to look at her with the same desire he had 20 years ago. Nicole has talked about how liberating it is to be with someone who loves all versions of her, the glamorous red carpet version and the no-makeup Sunday morning version, the Oscar-winning actress and the exhausted mom, the confident woman and the insecure one. Keith's consistent love has helped Nicole accept her aging in ways Hollywood typically doesn't allow women to do. One of the most touching aspects of their relationship that Nicole has shared is their ritual of morning coffee together. No matter how busy their schedules are, no matter what time Keith got home from a show or what time Nicole needs to be on set, they make time for morning coffee together. Just the two of them, talking about the day ahead, connecting before the world intrudes. It's a small thing, maybe 30 minutes, but Nicole says it's the foundation of their daily connection. It's when they check in emotionally, share concerns, make plans, and remind each other that they're a team. This ritual has probably saved their marriage more times than grand romantic gestures ever could, because it's consistent, it's daily, and it prioritizes connection over convenience. Nicole has revealed that she and Keith write their own vows to each other every year on their anniversary. Not the same vows they said at their wedding, but new vows reflecting who they are now, what they've learned that year, what they're committing to for the next year. This practice keeps their marriage from becoming stagnant, forcing them to actively choose each other repeatedly rather than coasting on vows they made decades ago. It's a beautiful way of acknowledging that marriage isn't a single decision made once at a wedding, but a series of decisions made every day, every year, for a lifetime. As Nicole has entered her late 50s, she's reflected on what she wants the third act of their marriage to look like. She's talked about possibly retiring from acting at some point to spend more time with Keith and their daughters. She's talked about traveling together, seeing the world without work obligations, maybe buying a place in Australia to be closer to family. She's talked about grandchildren someday, about growing old together, about the luxury of time after spending so many years rushing between commitments. Keith shares these dreams, talking about eventually scaling back touring, focusing on writing and producing music from a home studio, being more present for their daughters' adult lives. They're planning for a future together, assuming they'll be together, which is something not all long-term couples can say. What makes Nicole and Keith's relationship different from so many celebrity marriages isn't that they don't have problems. It's that they don't pretend they don't have problems. It's that they've been willing to be honest about the hard stuff, the addiction, the therapy, the distance, the work it takes to stay connected. They've shown that real love isn't effortless romance, it's consistent effort, daily choice, and willingness to fight for each other when it would be easier to walk away. They've demonstrated that you can have fame, success, beauty, and talent and still struggle in relationship, because relationships are hard for everyone. But they've also shown that with commitment, communication, therapy, and genuine affection, you can build something that lasts. Nicole's final revelation about Keith, the one that might matter most, is this: he made her believe in love again when she'd given up. After her divorce from Tom Cruise, Nicole thought she'd never trust anyone enough to remarry. She thought she'd focus on her career and her children and accept that romantic love just wasn't meant for her. Keith changed all of that. He proved to her that safe love exists, that vulnerable love exists, that real partnership exists. He showed her that marriage could be a source of joy instead of pain, connection instead of loneliness, growth instead of stagnation. And in return, Nicole gave Keith a reason to get sober, stay sober, and build a life worth living. They saved each other in the most real sense, not in some dramatic movie way, but in the quiet daily way of choosing each other's well-being over their own comfort. Looking at Nicole and Keith's nearly 2-decade marriage, the most important lesson isn't about grand romantic gestures or passionate red carpet kisses. It's about showing up. It's about staying when things get hard. It's about choosing love over convenience, commitment over comfort, and the long game over the easy exit. Nicole exposed the truth about Keith, He's not perfect, he's struggled, he's had to fight for his sobriety and work on himself and learn how to be a good partner. But he's also shown up consistently, loved her faithfully, supported her completely, and built a life with her that honors both of their dreams. And Keith exposed the truth about Nicole. She's not the untouchable ice queen some thought she was. She's a real woman with insecurities and fears and past pain, but she's also someone capable of extraordinary love, incredible loyalty, and the kind of grace that sees someone at their worst and stays anyway. Their story isn't a fairy tale. It's better than a fairy tale. It's real. And after almost 20 years of marriage, 2 daughters, countless red carpets, multiple career peaks, 1 life-saving intervention, 18 years of sobriety, and more love letters than anyone could count, Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban are still choosing each other. They're still writing new vows every anniversary. They're still having morning coffee together. They're still kissing on red carpets like newlyweds. They're still figuring it out, still working on it, still committed to it. That's the real love story. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth it. Not a fairy tale, but better. Because it's true.